Hey guys, welcome to DiscoverTheKingdom.net. Little cat hair there. I thought that I would do my first video blog on a story. And this story, uh, it would help you get to know me a little bit and see what I'm all about, hear my voice and maybe see my eyes and that sort of thing, and see the reflection of my computer and my glasses here. But this story is a story of, I'm calling it the Jesus Loves You story, and this is what happened. It was about the fall of 2002, about a year after 9/11, and I went on a mission trip. If you don't know what a mission trip is, it's a bunch of people get together, go to another country, and do some stuff, and that's what we were doing. I went with a rather large church, and the church we probably had about a dozen, maybe 14 people on this trip, and we went on an airline. First stop was we were going to Romania. I've been to Romania about 5 times, so this is my first trip to Romania that I'm talking to you about. We went, the first leg of the trip was from Atlanta to Detroit, and then from Detroit to Amsterdam, from Amsterdam to Bucharest, and the rest was going to be on ground. But the story starts on the trip between the leg of the trip that went from Detroit to Amsterdam. Now the the flight was kind of crowded. There was lots of people. There's lots of rows. It's a big airplane, a big jet, and I was sitting next to somebody who was. It was a 9-hour trip, and the guy next to me was kind of snoring, and so we were trying to cut some Z's, go to sleep, get some rest. It was in the middle of the night. It was very, very late, and so I was trying to kind of dozing in and out of being awake and asleep. I had a dream. It was just the strangest dream, because my dream was that I was finished with the trip and I was standing on a stage. There was an enormous amount of people in the audience, and I was telling them about the trip that I had just taken, and I hadn't even been on yet. So, but in my dream I had finished the trip, and in it I was telling the people some things. I was telling this audience that I heard a voice of God, and God was telling me that when you go to Romania, you won't need to tell them about any kind of theology. You don't need to do Bible stories. You don't need to do Sunday school. You don't need to do anything really in depth. You don't need to teach them great theology. What you need to do is tell them one simple little thing somebody needs to hear. And that one simple thing is, Jesus loves you. Now, I've had that same dream probably about 3 times in the 9 hours that we were on flight. About 3 times. And each time, the story would get a little bit more embellished, at which I didn't need to be telling them. It was, you don't need to be teaching them a Bible series. You don't need to be teaching them anything really deep. You just need to tell them that Jesus loves you. Remember, the dream is I'm standing on the stage telling people all this. So we get to Romania, and we were working in a little town. It was called Kobadin, and in that little town there's this building that we were kind of rearranging, knocking down some walls and plastering some walls and taking care of some of the property, cleaning it up and getting it ready. What they wanted to do is to use it for a social center where they were going to help people get something to eat, teach them some things that in case they wanted to get a job, and just kind of overall help them. Children would come up while we were working on this place, little kids, and these little children in the middle of eastern part of Romania spoke perfect English. Blew my mind. So here I am with this dream still hot and heavy and fresh on my mind, and these little kids come up to me and start talking to me in English, and the rest of us are communicating with us. And so I decide, these little kids know English. Let me see if I can get them to teach me how to say, Jesus loves you. in Romanian, because it might be possible that the person that God has sent me here, or people that God has sent me here to speak this message that I had this dream about, wouldn't know English, so let me try Romanian. So they taught me. I practiced it over and over. Jesus te iubește. Jesus te iubește. I practiced it over and over and over again. We were there for about a week, and just about everybody we met, I would say, Jesus te iubește to him. I'd say it over and over and over again. And I'll watch the person's reaction during the course of the week to see if maybe that was a person that would grasp this message. We would meet people walking up and down the road. We would meet people who worked in the church that we were at. We would meet people in the restaurants where we'd eat. Everybody, I would say, Jesus te iubește, trying to say, Jesus loves you, Jesus loves you. And I would not get any reaction. It just kind of bothered me. By the end of the week, I was getting really frustrated because this dream was really powerful. It was really strong. I've never had a dream quite like it. So about Friday of that week, we had a meeting set up with the mayor of the little town of Covidin and some of his staff. And I thought, well, maybe this is it. So they would introduce us to the mayor. I shook his hand and I said, Jesus te iubește to him, and Jesus loves you. And no reaction. It was funny because he was wearing kind of casual clothes like I am today. His deputy, second in command, he was in a suit and tie. I shook his hand, said, Jesus loves you. Jesus te iubește to him when I shook his hand. No reaction. There was I think she was like a city librarian, a lady that was there. She was dressed really sharply. And I remember I shook her hand and said, Jesus te iubește to her, and she kind of giggled and went to the mayor, nudged him, and said something to him with the words Jesus te iubește, and feel like, hey, he's trying to speak some Spanish, some Romanian, and all the Romanian he knows is this one, Jesus loves you. And he kind of brushed her off too. So I was, at the end of that week, it was about Saturday. By Saturday, I was really bummed major because this dream was just so strong. Sunday morning came around, and what the church did that we were meeting with, they had this main building where they would meet in the morning on Sunday morning, have a regular church service, and then they would break up in the afternoon, and they broke our team up into 2s and 3s, took us to different villages nearby where we were supposed to go. We went to about 2 or 3 villages each, having a church service in a home or a church or somewhere. One was even in the last one I went to was even in a storefront where they had rented out this building. And something really funny happened. During the day we were thinking about what to say, and in this story, just in my mind I kept thinking, I kept telling each group that I would say, they told me it was my turn to talk, I would say, Jesus sent me, God sent me 4,000 miles to tell you that Jesus loves you. I tell them a little bit about the dream, and that this is the only reason why I'm here, is to tell you Jesus loves you. The last place that we went to, there was a little bit of a mix-up because one of the vehicles malfunctioned. I don't know if it had engine trouble, a flat tire or something, but for some reason they needed to switch drivers around. And the driver that we were having all day that was taking us to the different places, he was wrestling with his vehicle somewhere, trying to get it to work, so they had to send another vehicle to come and pick us up. This one was a van. It was a little bit larger. We were trying to jam 5 or 6 people in this little car, and they came and got us in a van. The driver was not supposed to be there, and he was one of the ones that was on their ministry staff at the time. He came to pick us up, but he was a little bit early because the schedule got all out of whack because this one vehicle broke down. So this one man wasn't supposed to be there because of a car failure, ends up sitting through this service where I am talking about how Jesus gave me this message. Jesus loves you, and he sent me 4,000 miles. After it was over with, we trying to greet people, shake hands, and of course they don't understand what we're saying. We don't understand anything they're saying, so we're trying to grab people to interpret for us and whatever. Well, this driver who was on their ministry staff, who you would never have realized it would have been, he came up to me and he said to me, Mr. King, this message is for me. Now that just blew my mind because, well, for two things. One, they never called me Mr. Tim all week. It was Mr. Bean all week. They called me Mr. Bean for some reason. They thought I looked like Mr. Bean. And the number two thing that interested me is that he had never spoken to me in English all week. He always talked through an interpreter whenever he spoke to us. And he had misty eyes, tears in his eyes, and he told me that this message was for him. God had sent me 4,000 miles to tell a man who was already involved in ministry. I thought I was looking for some real lost sinner somewhere, someone who didn't know God at all. It turns out that the message was for somebody who just needed to hear Jesus loves you. It's not the end of the story. We went back home again. Our mission pastor had gone to another mission site. He had to go to another country, and so it was about 2 weeks later, 2 Sundays later, I get a phone call before church Sunday morning, and it's the missions pastor. He says, Tim, I had somebody lined up to tell about our Romanian trip, and he couldn't make it this morning. Do you think you could speak for about 2 minutes and just tell the people what you thought, about the trip and some of your thoughts about the trip? And I told him his name was Jason, Pastor Jason. I told him, I said, I don't think I could say in 2 minutes something that really changed my life. This was a life-changing trip for me. And he said, well, why don't you tell that Jesus loves you story that you've been telling? Just take 2 minutes and condense it to 2 minutes and tell this Jesus loves you story. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So it came time for him. He got up and he starts to tell the people about the mission trips that happen, and he introduces me and tells I'm going to say a few words about the mission trip. And so there I am. I begin with my story about how I'm on a plane and I have this dream that I'm standing in front of a bunch of people, and it dawns on me that I'm standing in front of a bunch of people telling this dream, and the dream that I was telling was being fulfilled before my very eyes. I was telling the people the exact same thing that I said in my dream, that I saw in my dream, 2 weeks before. Wow. So I just thought I'd share that message with you. God is real. He'll send somebody 4,000 miles if he needs to get you a message, just to let you know. And perhaps you're watching this and maybe nobody has ever told you before. He loves you, and he really cares, and I don't care what the circumstance says. The circumstance is wrong. Jesus loves you. So I'm signing off for now, and until next time, keep on discovering the kingdom.